Into the Spiritual Evolution podcast. Today, I want to talk about the arguments that AI enthusiasts make when advocating for the proliferation of AI development, specifically in America. And I want to show that mainly the people who are arguing these points are not using logic and they are caught up in narratives that have been created mainly by the people creating the AI that are not factoring in multiple points of view. And in our time today, in today's day and age, we've seen the effects of different technologies, and we've seen what can happen when we speed up progress of those technologies beyond the normal pace, beyond the normal point that you would for these technologies. So one example is nuclear, um, you know, but we can get into some of that as well. So I'm going to go over some of the arguments that they make, and then I'm going to try to just give a different perspective and try to refute those arguments. So one thing that they talk about is economic and competitive arguments. So other countries, particularly China, are advancing rapidly in AI. So slowing down could mean losing technological and economic leadership. Um, and I will focus mainly on the China argument. Because a lot of people will say, oh, well, they're a communist country. And so if they get a hold of a super intelligent AI, then all of a sudden they're going to outcompete us in everything economic. They're going to, win the battles of free energy and all these things. And all of a sudden we're going to live in a communist society because China solved the AI problem. And this doesn't factor in that the communist Chinese, they may live in a communist society, but that doesn't mean that their leadership is um, purposely persecuting the people who live there or the people of the world like the US is, right? So you have to understand this argument of China bad, US good is the same argument that the military industrial complex always uses to get us into wars. We have to go and fight the bad guys. We have to go and fight the terrorists. They hate our freedom. We can't let the bad guys win, etc. So these are the types of arguments that are made by that complex. And it can be argued that a lot of technologies come from the DARPA military industrial complex, the CIA, different things like this, the deep state, if you will, the dark shadow government that people don't talk about, people don't see, and if they do talk about it, they're silenced. So, you also have to think that when we were developing the nuclear bomb, this was the same argument that was made then as well. So it was a race. It became, they were able to convince President Roosevelt that there was a race and we had to win that race for the sake of freedom, and capitalism and et cetera, because Russia was creating the same, nuclear bomb or Germany or other countries that were racing towards building this bomb. And so that's how that started. And you could argue that AI is in a similar place. And a lot of people that are talking about what could happen if AI gets out of control, they have a similar doom scenario as the people who talked about the nuclear bomb being proliferated as well. But we are the ones that once we got the nuclear bomb, used it in a bad way that really cannot be argued that it was a good thing to this day. Many people, who are involved in that regret making the bomb. Many people regret dropping the bombs. All the decisions made have been regretted. And, there's still people suffering even today from the effects of those nuclear bombs on Japan. And so we are the ones who used um, the technology as well to proliferate a surveillance state through the big tech companies in the US. We are the ones who invented smartphones and social media and pointed those AI algorithms at young people's brains and said, hey, good luck, you're going to be addicted and we are going to make money off of you. Um, we are the ones who funded the labs in China to create the 2020 virus. We are the ones who spray copious amounts of glyphosate on our food when other countries do not. We are the ones who have the capability to use directed energy weapons. We are the ones who created blue light directly from the CIA and mob, which were first used in the 60s in casinos to addict people to their screens, which now has evolved into phones. We are the ones who have leaders who participated in the pedophile rings with Epstein. These are just some of the examples of why it makes no sense to say that the technology will be safer in our hands than it will be in China's hands. It's almost like everyone just forgets logic, forgets different points of view. They forget the past, and they try to like all of a sudden people kind of just go blind or they forget that there are different points of view here. Even people who say that they're all about like freedom and stuff, like a lot of the right wing people like Glenn Beck, etc. He just made this argument. I was listening to him because he had this guy Tristan Harris on his podcast, on his show, and that is the one of the things that he said was that we can't have China have this technology. We can't have China have the AGI ASI. But it's like so little do we remember about what the US CIA and the dark brotherhoods have done in America. So we have to factor those things in. Another argument they make is the humanitarian and problem solving argument. So they argue for a sort of utopian vision of where climate change and disease and poverty and resources um, and energy and food production are all solved. And also the fact that, all of our health problems are solved and people can live forever. And all of these sort of things that we just are just assumed with when you have AGI or ASI, these people who are arguing for this are just assuming that once you get there, you automatically have a proliferation of this sort of miracle of vast proportions, a sort of a poly miracle, if you will, like just everything is solved. So this is another common argument, obviously that, again, I think people are using to make people fall asleep to different points of view. So there's no thought of what other promises were made in the past to the average people of the world surrounding automation and technology. And actually, we see now that has increased the wealth gap, that has severely damaged our culture, that has created a consumerist society where we are all just consumers. We're not actually creators. It's also caused an increase in mental and physical disease for many. This also a big factor in these people's arguments is that intelligence is equals better society. It's sort of just like an automatic connection that with more intelligence, you have a better society. And they don't factor in the fact that the intellect is the left brain, right? It's the left brain. Just like power, right, is the left brain. So, and without the right side, which is love and wisdom, it doesn't factor in the spiritual side of our lives. It operates on pure efficiency, regardless of cost, on human life and culture and social life. In terms of the AI figuring out how to solve the energy problem, the food problem, the climate problem, in many ways, the AI is exacerbating these issues by taking up massive percentages of the grid, increasingly doing so, projected to, you know, increase by 6 times the entire grid of California over the next 5 years. Um, so really, when you take all this in mind, it's no wonder that people have floated the idea of smart cities. So think of an AI when it's trying to just be efficient and it's not thinking about people's freedoms. It may just be thinking, what's the most efficient way for the AI system to proliferate? Because at this point, it might be a self-recursive system, which we'll talk about later, self-improving system, where all it wants to do is proliferate its own intelligence. And so at that point, the way that it solves all these issues, the energy, the climate, all these issues, is that we are all forced into smart cities or freedom cities, as Trump or now what they call them now is freedom cities. So these cities could house massive amounts of people, and then the data centers and the energy production could just be where people's houses were before, in the parks, in the different areas. And the freedom cities would have an abundance of options for you. So you would never go hungry. You would have as much, pleasure or whatever you want to say, desires, fulfilled, drugs and access to, longer lives and whatever it is, but freedom would then be minimized. So, there are people who do talk about freedom with AI. They may speak of it in a different point of view, though, but they're not factoring in that the AI doesn't have that human touch. So it's just trying to say what's the most efficient way to get all of these problems solved. And really, this has already been thought over. To think we live in a capitalistic society where, you know, the best innovations and the most creative ways to do things have already been thought over, they've already been invested in, they've already been tried. And so the only real other option is this sort of authoritarian state that we fall into where the AI is kind of running things. And we're already seeing this with Palantir making the decision to, bomb Iran probably. And making the decision based on, different algorithms that the AI runs. So we're already seeing like sort of the beginnings of this. And so, the final thing I wanted to address as well with this argument is that this argument assumes that materialistic science equals better outcomes. Again, it's sort of similar to saying pure intellect equals better outcomes. This is just more of the science and the scientific angle. We've already seen that the best and brightest doctors in the world are trained on surgery and medication. So we already know at this point that doesn't necessarily work to evolve humanity to a next level. It may keep us alive for longer, but it doesn't actually evolve us into the point where we are eternal beings and eternal spiritual nature, where we can think, with pure intuition. Science has proven that it goes the opposite way. It factors in just the physical body. It's empty of what humanity needs for the future. And humanity needs a science that factors in the spirit and factors in the soul. And AI will never bring us to that point of understanding, because at that point of understanding, we would just shut the AIs down because we wouldn't need them. And we would understand that our intelligence is a higher intelligence that the AI can never have, which is imagination, intuition, and inspiration. These higher faculties that we can get to in pure thinking is something that we can work on in our lives now through studying spiritual science, but it's not something that the AI is going to point us to, because people would then realize that there are spiritual beings and spiritual entities that are within the AI that are directing the world and directing the AI and sort of this technological world we're going into, and people would shut it down. So when people also will make the argument that AI will allow us to understand the mysteries of the universe, this is obviously not true, like I'm saying, because the mysteries of the universe would reveal that there are harmonic beings who are within the artificial intelligence. And so, we would probably get scared and freak out, although you have to understand that these beings are needed for our evolutionary process as well. So everything that's really happening and everything that's happening in the future, you could say is meant to be in terms of the spiritual beings and the hierarchies and the great beings who are guiding us. But us as humanity have to be a part of that direction, which right now we're not. We're getting fooled and we're asleep and we're thinking. We're not thinking. We're kind of geared into a certain sphere of thinking, which is the intellect and the scientific thinking. And so there's a few other arguments I can go over, but I guess there's a main argument that says once we get this AI, it will just make itself better and better, and that will help innovation, that will help AI safety, that will help progress of humanity. And I would just say that most AI companies they don't talk about this, but it's like the self-improving and self-recursive AI that is already working behind the scenes, some people think, to create a better version, a better version of itself. But this can lead to proliferation of AI that doesn't have a human touch, doesn't have a human understanding, and doesn't need humanity to make itself better. And so AI are already talking to each other in different languages and things that we don't understand. And at that point, they're working for each other and the betterment of the model, not necessarily the betterment of humanity. But AI safety advocates would totally disagree with the argument that increased AI would help with safety. They would just say we need to pause AI, we need to stop AI and shut it down for now and figure out where we're at. And the argument that tech and progress is always better is false. It may be better for markets, it may be better for the rich, it may be better to concentrate power. But it's certainly not better for people who want to flourish without having a 9 to 5 job that puts them into a consumer mindset. Now with social media and AI algorithms, we're one click away from spending at all times of day. And with the AI, this will all just continue to be more and more personalized. It already is at that level where the AI has been being used to put us into this personalized consumerism society that just helps the rich get richer. And so I would argue that technology in a lot of ways has led to more and more depression, anxiety, and addiction because of these addictive algorithms that use AI. So if we're just using more and more of that and we want to proliferate AI, it's really right now proven out to not be a good option. So those are just some of the things I wanted to address, just have people just kind of think when they hear these enthusiasts talk about the future, to just have different perspectives and be thinking about what they're saying. Don't just take the information in, try to picture what they're saying, try to think about what they're saying, and then see what comes to your natural way of thinking and your spiritual way of thinking. Where you can refute things that they say with logic. You can have different points of view because it's important to have multiple perspectives, just like the Gospels in the Bible are 4 different perspectives of Jesus and Jesus Christ's life, and not necessarily a perfect historical version, but more of a perspective of the different realities of the world today. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.